There's a lot of videos online right now about cryptids, and I know I just posted my own iceberg about it, but I think we need to pay our respects to where cryptids came from too, which is mythical creatures from ancient folklore. I mean, cryptids are technically mythical creatures, but I'm talking about the old ones. And I want to make this video because I found this iceberg and almost everything on it I had never even heard of, so I know it's going to be a good one. The only ones on here that I know are Skinwalker and Mummy, and every single other one I've never ever heard of, so I'm excited, guys. Let's get straight into this. Please go follow my Instagram, please go join my Discord, and let's do this. Starting with the Pocong. A Pocong is a type of supernatural being or ghost that is widely recognized in Indonesian and Malaysian folklore. Its origins are deeply rooted in the cultural beliefs surrounding death and the afterlife in these regions. Pocong is said to be the soul of a dead person trapped in their shroud, known in Indonesian as kain kafan, which is used to wrap the body of a deceased person as part of Islamic funeral practices. The Pocong appears as a figure wrapped tightly in a white shroud. The shroud is tied over the head, under the feet, and on the neck, which gives the Pocong a distinctive look, with its head covered and the shape of his body outlined by the cloth. Because the ties prevent the ghost from walking, it's often depicted as hopping or floating to move. Its appearance is considered ominous and often associated with graveyards or places where someone has died under tragic circumstances. Like, these things are haunted as hell. Speaking of hell, hey, Jesus loves you. Also, what's cool with the Pocong is that it's very culturally significant to the values of its areas. Like, it's not just scary, it's related to how they view their dead and how they view death and burial and stuff. According to tradition, the ties around the shroud are supposed to be removed before burial, but if this step is forgotten, it's believed that the soul cannot leave the body and thus becomes a Pocong wandering the earth. So it's more than just a scary story, you know? The Krasu is a nocturnal female spirit of Southeast Asian folklore. It manifests as the floating disembodied head of a woman, usually young and beautiful with her internal organs still attached and falling off, trailing down her neck. You'll see a picture on screen. Now, the Krasu is it belongs to a big group of these mythological entities across different regions of Southeast Asia, and there's a bunch of just regional variations of it, of the same kind of thing pretty much, of a disembodied woman's head with organs and entrails hanging from its neck. There's one in Cambodia, in Laos, in Indonesia, in Vietnam, in the Philippines. There's a whole bunch. But the Krasu is the Thai version of this, and it's the most well-known and popular one. Now, the Krasu is also accompanied apparently by a will-o'-the-wisp luminescent glow. And the explanations attempted about the origin of the glow include the presence of methane in marshy areas, which we'll get into those sightings later in the origins and the stories and stuff. The spirit moves about by hovering in the air above the ground because it has no lower body. The throat may be represented in different ways, either as only the trachea or with the whole neck. The organs below the head usually include the heart and the stomach with the length of intestine. The intestinal tract emphasizing the ghost's how do I put this, voracious nature. But then interestingly, in the Thai film called Krasu Valentine, the ghost is represented with more internal organs like lungs and liver, but they're a lot smaller than they should be. Also, sometimes the Krasu is seen with fangs, with a vampire kind of vibe. And in the movie Ghosts of Guts Eater, she has a halo around her head. The Krasu has been the subject of a lot of films in the region. Most famously, My Mother is Arb, also known as Krasu Mom. This Cambodian horror film has the distinction of being the first film made in the People's Republic of Kampuchea after the absence of locally made films and the repression of local folklore in Cambodia. Cool little interesting tidbit. Okay, one thing before we get into the origin, a really funny, okay, it's kind of funny, guys. In the Philippines, there's a similar ghost called the Mananagal, I think, which is a local spirit that haunts pregnant women specifically. I don't know what that's on this page I'm reading. They wanted to add that in, that this other one haunts only pregnant women. That's kind of funny. Hey, what kind of music do you guys listen to? Low key, leave that in the comments, you know? Little question of the day. For me right now, I got a Chet Baker album on. He's an old jazz singer from the 50s. But also, if you watch me, you know I mess with Blade and Breakint, Beat Computer, Bright Eyes. If you know any of those artists, put that in the comments and let me know, guys. The first person to put a Blade lyric in the comments right now, without looking it up, because I'll know if you look it up, okay? I'll know if you look it up. The first person to really be a Blade fan and put a lyric in the comments will get pinned on this video. So yeah, race for that, guys. Anyways, belief in the existence of the Krasu is shared across Southeast Asia, and its origin is difficult to verify. However, it likely originates from folklore. In Thailand, the Krasu is believed to be a cursed individual, usually a female, who engaged in various sins and fraudulent conducts during her previous life. After she dies, her sins cause her to be born as something called a phut in Thai that has to live off wasted, uncooked, or rotten food. By the way, a phut is a thing. Whoa, that's not what I meant. Okay, I googled it and that's not. It says used to represent a sound by the passage of a bullet. That's not what I'm looking for. Or I don't know, I'm looking it up right now. I cannot find what FUT means. I'm sorry, guys. It's spelled B-H-U-T. I don't know, it's on this this page I'm reading, but you know, whatever. In recent time, the Thai entertainment industry has fictionalized the origin of Krasu as cursed from an ancient Khmer princess, as in demonic beauty. The kidnapped princess of the Khmer kingdom cheated on her husband with a soldier. The soldier was decapitated while the Khmer princess was burned to death. However, before she died, she chanted a spell to protect her mortal body, but was only able to save her head and her organs. This depiction, however, merely is just an attempt to put a royal touch or to reinvent a mythical beginning to a well-known story of an essentially folk origin, and it was done strictly for entertainment and commercial purpose. So there's no real origin in the folklore, it's just kind of a creature that has been made up over time, you know? That being said, there are some theories though. Also, I think I lied a little bit earlier, because this is mostly a Thai thing, but it's mostly Thai and Cambodian, so it's not just a Thai thing. Anyways, there are other oral traditions that say that the spirit was formerly a rich lady that had a length of black gauze or ribbon tied around the neck and head as a protection from the sunlight. This woman was then possessed by an evil spirit and cursed to become a Krasu. Other popular legends claim the origin of the spirit may have been a woman trying to learn black magic that made a mistake or used the wrong spell so that her head and body became separated. Past sins are also related to the transmission of the Krasu curse. Women who aborted or killed someone in a previous life will become a Krasu as punishment. Other folk stories talk about a person being cursed to become a Krasu after having consumed food and drink contaminated with a Krasu saliva or flesh. Popular imagination also claims that the transformation into a Krasu is largely restricted to the relatives of women practicing witchcraft, especially their daughters or granddaughters. Often women acting strangely in a community are suspected of becoming nightly a Krasu by other members of the village. Like women who are acting weird will like become a Krasu at night is like what people in the village think. That's kind of messed up, bro. That's kind of messed up. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the differences between the Thai versions and the Cambodian versions of this creature, or at least the different stories associated with it. So I'm going to start with the Cambodian folklore and then talk about the Thai folklore. So in the Cambodian folklore, this creature is usually a woman who is half spirit and half mortal, so literally and not just physically. During the daytime, they appeared to look like normal human beings, but during nighttime, they ascended, leaving their mortal body with only their head and organs gravitating to find food. They were believed to feast on smelly things, blood, raw meats, villagers' farm animals, corpses, feces, placentas, newborns, etc. These things just walk in the halls of Planned Parenthood, huh, bro? Their weaknesses are thorns and guard dogs, apparently, too. So remember that whenever you're building your next crib, put guard dogs around it and thorns on the wood so that this freaking creature cannot get inside and steal your newborn baby to eat it, or the newborn's feces. And in this folklore, also in Cambodian folklore, it's referred to as an op, AHP, which is also the singular and plural. Op are witches who failed practicing powerful black magic, causing it to backfire, cursing themselves. Others believe that op are black magic practitioners borrowing a demon's power by letting them possess their body at night, or letting it possess their daughter or granddaughter's body. In order to protect pregnant women and their child from becoming victims, relatives of these women would place thorny branches around the house as a barrier. Bro, you thought I was joking earlier. You cannot make this up. This improvised thorny fence discourages the op from coming to suck the blood and causing other suffering to the pregnant woman. After delivery, the woman's relatives must take the cut placenta far away for burial to hide it from the op. If the placenta is buried deep enough, the spirit would not be able to find it. It's believed that it would bring great calamities to the child and his family if an op ate the mother's placenta. And that is the Cambodian version, and again, they call it an op instead of a Krasu. Now, the Thai version. The Krasu is under a curse that makes it always hungry and always active in the night when it goes out hunting to satisfy its gluttony, seeking blood to drink or raw flesh to devour. It may attack cattle or chickens in the darkness, drinking their blood and eating their internal organs. It may also prey on pieces of cattle, such as water buffalo that have died of other causes during the night. If blood is not available, then Krasu may eat feces or carrion. And carrion is like the dead corpses of animals, like usually like birds. Clothes left outside would be found soiled with blood and excrement in the morning, allegedly after she had wiped her mouth. Therefore, villagers would not leave clothes hanging to dry outside during the night hours. The Krasu hides the headless body from which it originates in a quiet place because it needs to join it before daybreak, living like a normal person during the day, although having a sleepy look. Sounds like me, am I right? Am I right, guys? 8 hours of sleep, are you kidding me? Come on, call me a Krasu the way I be walking around sleepy every day. How can I sleep when there's so much TikTok to watch? To crush the still headless body of the Krasu is fatal to the spirit. The flying head will return after hunting but rejoin with the wrong body, which will lead it to suffer torment until death. If the top part of the body fails to find the lower half before daybreak, it will die in terrible pain. pain. The Krasue will also die if his intestines get cut off or if his body disappears or gets hidden by someone. Some folk beliefs hold that the creature can be destroyed by burning it. The main foes of the Krasue are mobs of angry villagers carrying torches and machetes. They may catch the Krasue and kill it, or watch where she goes before dawn and destroy her body. There's also a legend that says that people who are wounded should be aware of the Krasue because it can smell the blood and will come to eat the blood at night when people fall asleep. However, there are ways to prevent the Krasue from coming inside the house. House owners usually build spiky fences or grow spiky bamboo to protect themselves from the Krasue. Krasues are scared of spiky things because his intestine might get stuck and it could not escape. Now, there are actually a scary amount of sightings of this Krasue op thing. So like there were strange red lights floating above the paddy fields in an area near Wat Taco in about mid-June 2014, and it was believed to be a Krasue. And then soon after, hundreds of teenagers, and some nights ranging to thousands, flocked to the area reportedly to prove the truth. This caused damage to the field though, and the landlord insisted that there are no Krasue here, and the lights seen were actually from a floating lantern, like from like a bird chaser. In September of 2015, there was a photo shared online above a Ban 5 village of what was supposed to be one of these things. Editor, see if you can find it, please. You better. I don't know what that voice was, man. And there's just a bunch, usually of floating red lights is what it seems to be usually, that are all sightings. Now, in mid-May 2023, teenagers at a Chet Samian subdistrict gathered in a group chatting around midnight at the edge of the irrigation canal. Suddenly, the youngest one noticed a strange red light floating in the direction of. The other one shouted, "Krasue," and they all hurried there on a motorbike. But this event was recorded by a teenager and posted on TikTok. An elderly local man said the area used to be rampant with Krasue in the past. This one's kind of cool. Now, I'm gonna say one more sighting before we move on. In mid-October 2023, there were at least 3 eyewitness sightings of a Krasue in Buri province. 2 of them were young women, another was a 70-year-old farmer. Most of the story takes place in mid-September, but it became famous about a month later. The elderly farmer said he had a serious confrontation with a Krasue on the night of September 18th at 1:30 a.m. It appeared to be a woman in her 60s with shoulder-length white hair and bare teeth at him. As he was about to hit it with the shovel he was carrying, it floated away. He claims that Krasue tried to break into his duck and chicken coops. Later on the night of October 13th at 9:30 p.m., he experimented by hanging a duck's carcass from a rain tree. It turned out that a Krasue appeared and snatched up the duck and floated away, sucking out all of his intestines. This time he had another witness who was a neighbor. Another eyewitness was a young woman who said that she encountered the Krasue in a field on the night of September 19th while waiting for her young husband to farm. She said that it floated along the surface of the water in the rice fields along with his intestines. She said that it floated along the surface of the water in the rice fields along with its intestines. Another eyewitness was a 21-year-old woman who had just given birth a short time before. She woke up at 2 a.m. because her baby was crying. When she finished taking care of the baby, she went to the bathroom. When she came out, she saw a strange light in front of the house, and when she opened the curtains to see, it looked like something was floating past. She said she had left a large amount of blood-stained sanitary pads in a garbage bag in front of the house. And all 3 people here, it was like the same district, or same 2 districts in this area, and they all knew each other. This one's kind of creepy. All right, next up we have the Jiangshi, or Jiangshi. A Jiangshi, also known as a Chinese hopping vampire, is a type of reanimated corpse in Chinese legends and folk. It's typically depicted as a stiff corpse dressed in official garments from the Qing dynasty, and it moves around by hopping with its arms outstretched. It kills living creatures to absorb their life force, usually at night, while during the day it rests in a coffin and hides in dark places such as caves. Jiangshi legends have inspired a genre of Jiangshi films and literature in Hong Kong and East Asia. Although the pronunciation of Jiangshi varies in different East Asian countries, all of them refer to the Chinese version of vampires. The Qing Dynasty scholar Ji Jiaolin mentioned in one of his books that the causes for a corpse to be reanimated can be classified in either one of 2 categories: a recently deceased person coming to life, or a corpse that has been buried for a long time but is not decomposed. And some of the causes of this that can make it happen are the use of supernatural arts to resurrect the dead, spirit possession of a dead body, a corpse absorbs sufficient life force to return to life, the dead person is not buried even after a funeral has been held, and then what happens with this one is the corpse comes to life after it's struck by a bolt of lightning, or bear with me, this is awesome, when a pregnant cat, or a black cat in some tales, leaps across the coffin, or when a person's soul fails to leave their deceased body due to improper death, suicide, or just wanting to cause trouble, or finally a person injured by a Jiangshi is infected with the Jiangshi virus and gradually changes into a Jiangshi over time, and this comes from the Mr. Vampire movies. Now, generally, a Jiangshi's appearance can range from unremarkable, like just, a recently deceased person, to horrifying. And by horrifying, I mean rotting flesh, rigor mortis, as with corpses that have been in a state of decay over a long period of just decaying bodies. The Chinese character for Jiang in Jiangxi means literally hard or stiff. It's believed that the Jiangxi are so stiff that they cannot bend their limbs or body, so they have to move around by hopping while keeping their arms stretched out for mobility. Jiangxi are depicted in popular culture to have a paper talisman with a seeding spell attached onto and hanging off the forehead in portrait orientation. And they wear a uniform coat-like robe and round-top tall trimmed hat, kind of like a mandarin. A peculiar feature is the greenish-white skin. One theory is that this derived from fungus or mold growing on the corpses. It's said to have long white hair all over its head, and it may behave like an animal. The influence of Western vampire stories brought the blood-sucking aspect to the Chinese myth in more modern times, in combination with the concept of a hungry ghost, though traditionally they feed solely on the, life force of a living individual for sustenance. Now, a supposed source of the Jiangxi stories came from the folk practice of transporting a corpse over 1,000. Let me explain. The relatives of a person who died far away from home could not afford vehicles to have the deceased person's body transported home for burial, so they would hire a Taoist priest to conduct a ritual to reanimate the dead person and teach him or her to, quote, hop their way home. The priest would transport the corpses only at night and would ring bells to notify others in their vicinity of the presence of this deceased person, because it was considered bad luck for a living person to look at a Jiangxi. Now, the corpses would be arranged upright in a single file and be tied to long bamboo rods on the sides, while two men, one at the front and one at the back, would carry the ends of the rods on their shoulders and walk. When the bamboo flexed up and down, the corpses appeared to be hopping in unison when viewed from a distance away. So the idea, basically, let me simplify this a little bit more. The idea basically is that back in the day, they would want to move dead people back to their hometown, and sometimes if you couldn't afford the vehicle, I don't know, this is ancient times, like a horse and carriage or a car or whatever, you would hire a priest to do this thing where I said that they would get bamboo, they would get all the corpses because they'd do multiple at a time, right? And then they would move them, right? But then they would look like they're bouncing up and down, so people from afar would just see these corpses, these dead people bouncing up and down, and that is kind of thought to be where the Jiangxi stories started. Next up, we have the Duwais. Duwais is a very dangerous jinn. She attacks both men and women, causes their children to die in infancy, makes them wasteful or addicted to some drug, or kills their animals. Duwai is not seen by anybody. She is a secret cause of evil and thus far more dangerous than any other type of creature in Islamic folklore. Now, in Islamic folklore, it's said that the Duwais can be killed by a charm written by a FQI, or an Islamic theologian. But if that charm is not sufficiently powerful, then the children of the Duwais will avenge her death by killing the FQI, the Islamic theologian. And the name Duwais is also called as the As-Sobian, which means mother of youngsters, especially in her capacity to cause the death of infants. Also, the Duwais is known as the notorious Lilith demon across some places in the Arab East. Now, before you understand how an Duwais works, you need to understand what a jinn is in the Islamic faith. Jinn are essentially invisible spirits that live on Earth, but usually can't be seen by humans. These spirits aren't always inherently good or evil, but they can choose their own path and are judged by Allah just like humans. They also have their own societies and they're structured as tribes. However, these days, jinn are most often heard about when they've been bad. On occasion, jinn will take a physical form that's visible to humans. Most often, they'll take the form of a scorpion or a lizard or a snake. However, sometimes they'll turn themselves into a human, and that's where the Duwais comes in. Duwais is an evil, or according to some, misunderstood, jinn who takes the form of a gorgeous woman. She uses her attractiveness to lure men to their demise. By the way, if it sounds like I'm confusing you with different interpretations, that's just because there are different interpretations of this folklore. I'm giving a little bit of everything, I guess, just bear with me. There's multiple ways to interpret the Duwais. In most accounts of encounters with Duwais, it's nearly impossible to resist her charm. She appears as a woman with long, dark, black, and beautiful hair, as well as gorgeous legs. However, according to most, the most enticing thing about Duwais is her scent, which is said to be sweet and almost intoxicating. She will often appear to her soon-to-be victims as a young, beautiful traveler who's lost and needing help. Duwais is most often seen at night and is said to prey on unscrupulous men who roam the streets looking for women to sleep with. She'll flirt with these men and draw them close, and then in an instant, she will transform into an old woman and slice off their heads. It's kind of like that, the Moira from American Horror Story. You know what I'm talking about? Or Being Crazier? I don't know. Same vibe that. Also, I got a lot of my information from that one from alittlebithuman.com. Next up, we got Korean egg ghosts, or Dalgyalgwishin. Egg ghosts emanate from Korean folklore and legend. They're named for their pale, void appearance. These horrifying creatures aren't like Humpty Dumpty from the Tony Zerrett Humpty Dumpty Humpty fell off a wall. Editor, please put that in right now. It's so funny. Instead, despite the silly name, egg ghosts is one of the most terrifying entities you could imagine. Not only are egg ghosts like creepy, but the tales behind their conception are sad, haunting, and mysterious. And the result is one of the most unique phantoms in all of ghost lore. Also for this one, I'm getting my information from exemplore.com. Now, accounts of egg ghosts vary wildly. Sometimes they're described as humanoid entities without facial features. Their heads are described as being opaque and egg-shaped, and they occasionally appear larger than the figure's bodies. In other tales, these ghosts are more closely resembled like to hunchbacks. In some stories, egg ghosts are not only faceless, but they also lack arms, legs, and any other extremities, so they just look like eggs, and they're always faceless though. Perhaps the lack of a well-defined description of an egg ghost comes down to the belief that anyone who sees an egg ghost is not long for the world. Egg ghost spirits do not have much in the way of a well-defined personality or human trait. This lack of personality makes egg ghosts something of an anomaly within East Asian and Korean folk, where most mythical beings feature human characteristics or are associated with like particular people. Like there's the devious and seductive Umiho, which is the mournful virgin ghost. Meanwhile, egg ghosts tend to act little discernible motivation. They typically prowl forests restlessly, stalking any hikers who wander there, but they don't attack the hikers. Instead, they just imbue them with whatever drama resulted in their existence, the devastating gravity of which kills the hikers. Again, there are many variations on the egg ghost tale. In some stories, egg ghosts don't kill people but possess them, and in other stories, they don't inhabit forests but other dark, shadowy places like the alleyways of cities. And that's the theme I think we're gonna see with a lot of these creatures in this video, is that they vary a lot, because a lot of these are just super old, and there's so many different interpretations of them just because of how old they are and how long they've been around in folklores. Now, no one is quite sure how or why an egg ghost manifests. However, most believe that it's a form of a childless spirit who died without any loved ones present. This lack of friends and family results in egg ghosts lacking any features, personality, or identity, which is kind of sad and kind of mean. Egg ghost spirits are commonly depicted as women, hence the childless element of the legend. The egg-shaped aspect also may have symbolic meaning, as eggs are often associated with fertility and motherhood. Now, compared to other myths and legends, egg ghosts don't have the richest folk, but it's this very lack of understanding, reasoning, motivation, or physical characteristics which makes these creatures so terrifying. And capable of communication, you can't like bargain with it or reason with it or like say, no way, please. They can't be tricked or understood, and by the time that you're aware of one, it's too late. Perhaps the only thing more terrifying than an egg ghost is the thought of becoming one, to become trapped as a restless spirit, stripped of all of humanity, left to wander lonely through the forests of Korea. That sounds kind of nice though. I don't know, Korea's pretty as hell, man. I don't know, that sounds kind of nice actually. All right guys, from now on, I'm on a different mic. I got a new microphone in the mail, so if it sounds different, that's why. Ganjang is a mystical entity deeply ingrained in the folklore of North Sumatra, Indonesia, particularly among the Batak people. It's a phenomenon that combines elements of mysticism, social jealousy, and troll practices, and we're gonna get the term Bagu Ganjang itself is derived from the Batak language, where Bagu means ghost or spirit, and Ganjang means long. The spirit is described as having a tall stature, long hair, and a frightening face. It's believed to dwell in the tops of tall trees and is feared for its ability to bring harm or even death to those who encounter it or offend it. There are stories of individuals falling ill without any medical explanation, which has been attributed to the actions of a Bagu Ganjang, especially if the person has violated certain local customs or trespassed in areas to be under its protection. The entity is not just feared for its physical manifestations, but also for its potential to sway individuals for personal gain or to cause harm to others. Like other ritualistic practices involving spirits, invoking Bagu Ganjang is believed to require offerings or sacrifices, ranging from simple food offerings to the more severe requirement of a human life sometimes. The belief in Bagu Ganjang reflects a deeper social and cultural dynamic in the communities that fear it. For example, sudden illnesses or unexplained death, especially among young or unmarried individuals, are often attributed to these spirits, and this attribution to supernatural causes might also intersect with local practices of shamanism or folk medicine, where traditional healers or shamans play roles in diagnosing and treating illnesses attributed to these supernatural causes. Interestingly, the concept of Bagu Ganjang and its integration into the cultural fabric of the Batak people is a subject of debate. Some view it as a distortion of traditional Batak culture, asserting that it arose from social envy and vendettas in the late 1990s. It suggested that the stories of Bagu Ganjang may have been manipulated or exaggerated as a form of social control or as a means to express societal tensions. Despite its mystical origins, Bagu Ganjang is intertwined with the cultural entity of the Batak people, reflecting their strong adherence to tradition and respect for ancestral spirits. However, there's also a perspective that sees the narrative of Bagu Ganjang as potentially misinterpreting or misrepresenting deeper cultural values and beliefs. Alright, next up is the Abu Regal Masluka. Now, on this one, I really could not find that much information. At all. There's almost nothing nothing on this one. But I'm gonna report what I did find. So in Egyptian folktales, Abu Regul Masluka, or in English, the man with the flayed leg, is described as a man who is severely disfigured, with his left foot completely mangled and his right foot partially deformed. Abu Regul Masluka would often kidnap or punish young children, a convenience that Egyptian parents have taken advantage of throughout the generations. It's said that this monster only came at night and targeted children who did not obey their parents' orders, those who stayed up late, refused to eat their meals, or did not drink their milk. Now, although the exact origin is not well documented, some people online have theorized that Abu Regul Masluka is a description of an ancient Egyptian deity named Bes. Bes was the god of joy and happiness in ancient Egypt and the protector of children in the Roman and Greek eras. In most depictions, Bes is portrayed as a creature of short stature. His distinctive form became more apparent during the Middle Kingdom, but the earliest recognized representation of him dates back to the Old Kingdom. In this era, the deity was depicted as wearing a lion's skin as a mask. Now, the origin of this apparently is that he, in some folklores, again, this is kind of muddy, but in some folklores, he's like a monster that got burnt when he was a child because he didn't listen to his parents. So now he hunts down naughty children to cook them and eat them. Next up, we got night marchers, which are from Hawaii. In Hawaii mythology, night marchers or spirit ranks are the deadly ghosts of ancient tribal Hawaiian warriors. The night marchers are the vanguard for a sacred king, chief, or chiefess. On the nights honoring the Hawaiian gods Kane, Ku, Lono, or on the nights of Kanaloa, they are said to come forth from their burial sites or to rise up from the ocean and to march in a large group to ancient Hawaiian battle sites or other sacred places. The legend says that night marchers are normal-sized warriors dressed for battle, carrying spears, clubs, and some are beating war drums and blowing tones from conch shells to announce the advancing of their march. According to the myth, they are suspended in air and their feet don't touch water or ground as they traverse through the night. And they leave no evidence of their visitation, like there's no physical evidence they've ever been there, which is convenient, you know, since they're like folklore being, there's no evidence. Now, they march in darkness after sunset and march as a group continuously just until about sunrise. Anyone living along their path may hear chanting, sounds of blown conch shell tones, and marching tones in the night, or like marching noises, I guess. And then after this, there's like a foul and musky, quote, death-like odor, and torches getting brighter and brighter as the night marchers get closer. Night marchers might appear during the day if they were trying to escort a dying relative to the spirit world. Ancient Hawaiian beliefs state that any mortal looking upon or being seen in defiance toward the marchers will die violently. Barriers placed in the path of night marchers will not deter them. Some people maintain that if the mortal lies motionless face down on the ground, they are showing proper respect, fear, and deference to the night wars, and they'll be spared. Additionally, mortals can avoid harm or death from night marchers by being fortunate to have an ancient ancestor marcher present to recognize them. As they encounter the mortal, they will call out Nau, which means mine in Hawaii. No one in the warrior line will harm them. Also, if I just completely screwed up that pronunciation of Nau or anything here, I apologize. I'm not Hawaiian, I apologize. Hawaiians are chill as hell though, low-key. I don't know if you're watching this, but I got a family member who's Hawaiian and he's chill as hell, dude. Like, he's from Hawaii, he just moved here a few years ago. He's awesome. Y'all Hawaiians, cool. Shout out that guy if you're watching. He always brings up how my name on YouTube is the same name as like a Hawaiian dish, which I didn't even know whenever I made my name Poi, but apparently Poi is like a dish in Hawaii as well. Anyway, legend says planting living shrubs around one's home is said to keep away all evil spirits and will cause the night marchers to avoid the area. The night marchers are said to walk through houses with doors and back doors placed in a straight line. The ceremony and conduct of the march are customized to the tastes of its honored warrior leader. A Hawaiian chief or king who's known to be fond of music would be honored with all the drumming and chanting, but if the king or chief enjoyed peace and quiet, the march would be as silent as possible. Further, if the king or chief did not like to walk around that much, he would be carried in a sling by warriors. In ancient Hawaiian lore, the laws declared body parts of a king or chief to be sacred and not to be seen by a mortal. The punishment for looking at these parts is always instant death, usually by bolts of intense light and flaming heat originating from several of the warrior's eyes aimed toward the mortal. The violating mortal is incinerated instantly and the bodily remains dissipate as vapors. If a king's or chief's face was not supposed to be observed, the king or chief would lead the assembled night marchers from the front. If his back was not to be looked upon, he would be in the back of the assembled group. However, for some chiefs, no part of them was forbidden to look at by mortals. These chiefs would march among their own warriors in the group. Some marches are joined by the Hawaiian gods. The torches are said to burn brighter in these marches. The largest torches are carried one to the front, one in the back, and 3 within the group. The number 5 is significant in Hawaiian mythology. In the night marchers with Hawaiian gods present, there are 6 gods, 3 males, and 3 females. So I don't know why the number 5 is even being brought up right now in this wiki article that I'm looking at, but they wanted to let you know that the number 5 is significant, but there's 6 gods. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Next up, we have the Manananggal, and I'm getting my information for this one from udalali.com. A diverse range of bloodthirsty creatures exists in Philippine mythology, painting a rich and horrifying horrifying tapestry of folklore and traditions. The Menenengal might be one of the most chilling entities among that disturbing pantheon. Menenengals are often portrayed as terrifying, supernatural entities that can sever their upper torso and sprout wings to fly in search of their prey. While it can be male or female, it's usually depicted as a female. A Menenengal typically consumes human blood and is particularly known for preying on pregnant women. This creature is also said to have a penchant for feasting on the hearts and blood of fetuses, apparently. So again, keep these boys away from the Planned Parenthood. The Menenengal is largely recognized in provincial superstitions and is a popular figure in spooky tales narrated by elders, symbolizing themes of jealousy and revenge and caution and protection during pregnancy. Her haunting presence is often accompanied by a creature called a tick-tick, more like a tick-tock. Am I right? Yeah, more like a tick-tock. If you see a tick-tock, get scared, you know, because there's gonna be a flying creature coming to kill your fetus. If a tick-tick, tick-tock, do you get the reference? Anyways, a tick-tick is a small bird named for the sound that it makes, and it serves as an eerie indicator of the Menenengal's proximity. The louder the sound, the further the creature. The softer the sound, the closer. It seems kind of opposite of what it should be, but I'm not here to judge. Just a little observation. While the origins of the legends surrounding creatures like the Menenengal are not precisely documented, folklore and tales about them are believed to have been formed and shaped over centuries as oral traditions before being documented in writing, potentially serving as cautionary or explanatory tales to make sense of the unexplained, such as illnesses, deaths during childbirth, or other tragic events. Menenengal literally means one who removes or one who separates. This refers to the creature's ability to separate or detach its upper torso from the rest of its body to fly and hunt for prey. The name is indicative of its horrifying and unique characteristic of self-segmentation in pursuit of its victims. This is scary, dude. This is scary, man. I'm telling you right now, this is scary. In the broader spectrum of Philippine folklore, this creature is part of an extensive family of entities that share an obsession with blood and entrails. Or entrails, I guess, dude. Whatever. Y'all hate my pronunciation of stuff, dude. Shut up. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Y'all are awesome. The Menenengal is a captivating... Anyways, the Menenengal is a captivating symbol of the extensive and multifaceted mythological landscape of the Philippines and how, like, diverse it is. Okay, this next one, I'm not gonna try to pronounce it. It's Cheoneo something, but it translates to the Korean virgin ghost, so I'm just gonna call it that from now on. The Korean virgin ghost is the spirit of an unmarried woman in Korean folklore and urban legend. In early traditional Korea, women were brought up with the ideologies that their life's sole purpose shall be serving their father, husband, and children, which is the way it should be, damn it! No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just making a funny joke. That's just a little joke. Subscribe for more funny jokes like that one. It was believed that a woman gets lifelong resentment and cannot move into the afterlife if she dies before fulfilling those misogynistic responsibilities. It was considered to them that dying a virgin is equivalent to their life being meaningless. Thus, in the folklore, unmarried young girls after death became a han and turned into evil spirits. They mainly attached to young girls of their age, harassing and harming them. This may also run in the family and are specially enlisted as a vassal in their household. A small shelf is hung on the wall in one corner and a small wooden box is enshrined on it, or the spirit is enshrined in a door gap. The spirit is often depicted as a woman wearing a white hanbok, also called a sobok, the traditional white mourning attire with their hair down. Traditionally, the married women tied their hair up, and since the spirit died unmarried, the spirits had their hair loose and down. The spirit had a pale white face with dark circles and a small amount of blood drips from the side of her mouth, and sometimes are depicted as shedding tears of blood or even covered in blood. Originally, however, the Korean virgin ghosts were considered to be indistinguishable from humans because of their neat appearance. Korean virgin ghosts are mainly known for haunting abandoned buildings, especially hospitals, schools, bathrooms, cemeteries, lakes, dark country roads, or wooded areas. They start their act around midnight, which continues until dawn. They almost always have long hair covering their faces with sullen features dressed in white. It's believed that people will know they're in the presence of a virgin ghost when there is a sudden change in temperature and the wind direction, apparently. They haunt with anger and revenge to those who cause them harm and are also known to haunt newly married couples, and they're considered to bring illnesses and accidents. Since ancient times, it has been thought that the resentment was very deep when a virgin died. There's a myth that if anyone gets possessed by a virgin ghost, they will harbor strong resentment or they will not be able to get married. For this reason, in the old days, for fear that a virgin would die and become a ghost, dolls emphasizing the male genitalia were made out of straw and put in a coffin, or dolls dressed in men's clothes and buried upside down. Then thorns were placed around the coffin and buried. The reason for putting a male doll emphasizing the genitals in a coffin or wearing men's clothes is to comfort them from making contact for men even after they die, and burying the coffin upside down is to block the virgin ghost from coming out. This part shows how much the fear of virgin ghosts in the civilian world was overwhelming in the past. Now, interestingly, there's also the male equivalent of this thing known as the Korean bachelor ghost, and it's also considered that the Korean virgin ghost can only be eliminated by performing the ritual of exorcism. Also, this one, bear with me, this is kind of funny. funny. Virgin ghosts can also be made to move to afterlife by traditionally erecting, great word choice Wikipedia, phallic statues. Some of these statues can still be found in Hazendang Park located in Samchoik. Shrines for the Korean virgin ghosts may feature phallic carvings and sculptures and will have annual rites offering food and drink to the souls. Next up is one of the only ones I knew before looking at this iceberg, and that is the mummy. A mummy is a dead human or an animal whose soft tissues and organs have been preserved by either intentional or accidental exposure to chemicals, extreme cold, very low humidity, or lack of air, so that the recovered body does not decay further if kept in cool and dry conditions. Some authorities restrict the use of the term to bodies deliberately embalmed with chemicals, but the use of the word to cover accidentally desiccated bodies goes all the way at least to the early 17th century. But that doesn't really matter because we know that, but what about the folklore of these? Mummies are commonly featured in horror genres as undead creatures wrapped in bandages. Similar undeads include skeleton and zombies. The mummy genre has its origins in the 19th century when Egypt was being colonized by France and subsequently by Victorian Britain. The first living mummies in fiction were mostly female, and they were presented in a romantic and sexual light, often as love interests for the protagonist. Starting from the 1930s, the romantic mummy was supplanted by the monster mummy, pioneered by Boris Karloff in the 1932 movie The Mummy. Now, there's not much to actually say about the folklore of mummies because most of the folklore is modern, so I'll just say a little bit about the common folklore, but I won't spend too much time on this one. When a pharaoh or other royal member died, they had their organs, including rarely the heart, removed and preserved separately. Later, the body would be salted and preserved, and they were wrapped and decorated. Mummies, despite their frail appearance, are said to be very strong, and sometimes they can even place a curse on any intruder who disturbs them. Yeah, there's not really much to say about mummies. Next up, we have the Chanchan. The Chanchan is a mythical creature found in the Mapuche religion, as well as in other folk mythologies of Chile and southern Argentina. According to legend, the Chanchan is the result of a magical transformation performed by a Calcu, a Mapuche sorcerer. Only the most powerful Calcus are said to possess the knowledge to become this feared creature. To become the Chanchan, the Calcu undergoes a voluntary transformation facilitated by an anointing with a magical cream on the throat. This cream allows for the removal of the head from the body, with the detached head becoming the Chanchan. The Chanchan takes the form of a human head adorned with feathers and talons. Its unusually large ears function as wings, enabling it to fly during only moonless nights, apparently. It's believed that Chanchans possess all the magical powers of a Calcu and can only be seen by other sorcerers or individuals seeking power. Sorcerers assume the form of a Chanchan to engage in their malevolent activities, and this transformation grants them additional abilities, including the ability to drink the blood of the sick sleeping. While the terrifying appearance of the Chanchan remains invisible to the uninitiated, they can still hear its distinctive cry of choo choo choo. This cry is considered a dire omen and often predicts the impending death of a loved one. Alright, next up we have a really cool one. This has been one of my favorites just in general, a banshee. A banshee, which means woman of the fairy mound or fairy woman, is a female spirit in Irish folklore who heralds the death of a family member, usually by screaming, wailing, shrieking, or keening. Her name is connected to the mythologically important tumuli or mounds that dot the Irish countryside, which are known as Sidae in Old Irish. Sometimes she has long, steaming hair, which she may be seen combing, with some legends specifying that she can only keen while combing her hair. By the way, keening is a traditional form of vocal lament for the dead in the Gaelic Celtic tradition, known to have taken place in Ireland and Scotland, and editor put a video of keening right here. She wears a gray cloak over a green dress, and her eyes are red from continual weeping. She may be dressed in white with red hair and a ghastly complexion, according to a first-hand account by Anne Lady Fanshawe in her memoirs book. But then Lady Wilde in her books provides this description. The size of the banshee is another physical feature that differs between regional accounts. Though some accounts of her standing unnaturally tall are recorded, the majority of tales that describe her height state the banshee's stature as short, anywhere between 1 foot and 4 foot. Her exceptional shortness often goes alongside the description of her as an old woman, though it may be intended to emphasize her state as a fairy creature. Sometimes the banshee assumes the form of some sweet-singing virgin of the family who died young and has been given the mission by the invisible powers to become the harbinger of coming doom to her mortal kindred. Or she may be seen at night as a shrouded woman crouched behind trees, lamenting with a veiled face, or flying past in the moonlight crying bitterly. And the cry of the spirit is mournful beyond all other sounds on earth and betokens certain death to some member of the family only whenever it's heard in the silence of the night. And I'm not gonna try to read this, but I think it's interesting enough to put in the video still. I'll put a picture on screen right here. This is John O'Brien's Irish English Dictionary of the entry of the Banshee. So yeah, pause this right now if you want to read this. I think it's pretty. Anyways, now this Banshee would sing these keens or these laments when a family member died or was about to die, and even the person had died far away and news of their death had not yet come. So it kind of could like tell you before they actually, like before you knew at least. In those cases, her wailing would be the first warning the household had of the death. The Banshee is also a predictor of death. If someone is about to enter a situation where it is unlikely they will come out alive, she will warn people by screaming or wailing, giving rise to the Banshee also being known as a wailing woman. The Banshee was also associated with the death coach, being either said to summon it with her keening or to travel in tandem with it. When several Banshees appear at once, it indicates the death of someone great or holy. The tales sometimes recounted that the woman, though called a fairy, was a ghost, often of a specific murdered woman or a mother who died in childbirth. Now, historians have traced the first stories of the Banshee to the 8th century, which were based on the tradition of keening before it was attributed to these like otherworldly mythic creatures. There were women who would actually sing these songs to lament someone's death. They would be keening. They were known as keeners, and since they accepted alcohol as payment, they were said to be sinners and punished by being doomed to become banshees. Also, according to the legend of the Banshee, if she's spotted, she'll vanish into a cloud of mist, and this action creates a noise similar to that of a bird flapping its wings. Also, it's important to note that according to the legend, Banshees don't cause deaths, they can only serve as a warning of it. And now Banshees are in like modern culture all the time, like everywhere. Remember, I used to play Minecraft, like modded Minecraft, and there was a mod that had a Banshee in it, and it like scared the hell out of me. It was just like some woman screaming, bro, and I was like, all right, next up we got the Pataton. This is one that has almost no information, dude. This one took me forever to find literally anything about. So this is like some like real, this is some deep lore, guys, okay? Patatong is an urban legend evil spirit that comes from women who died during childbirth, preys on humans to get what they want. This ghost can be said to be very active during day and night, and this ghost is often found in watery places such as rivers, sewers, rice fields, and swamps. Also, guys, I can only find stuff from like either a really poorly written thing or from a different language, so I assume the poorly written one is just a translation of that language because it's like about the same length. So don't blame me, please. I tried, guys. I tried, and I'll try more. I'll be doing more research on this, and I'll come back if I find anything else, but there was really almost nothing on this one. Anyways, usually humans who are possessed by this ghost, the Patatong, can be seen from the marks on the forehead, head, or hands that there is some kind of light that lights up, and the victims of this ghost are usually pregnant women and buffalo. What's the difference? Am I right? I'm kidding. Oh my god, I'm kidding. This is a joke, guys. It was a little joke. Just kidding. Just a little bit there. To get rid of him, the Taraha people do various things, such as using certain woods and hitting the ghost, and the ghost will go away, and some use mats. The mat is held on the border of the village on which jewelry from the place is placed, or bamboo is placed on the entrance to the village. So I guess the mat would be there in case a Patatong came, right? By the way, this is Indonesian as well, from a place called Tanah Toraja, Indonesia. And if they managed to kill the ghost, they would hold an offering ceremony that they killed it, and the Patatong is described as a green, airy, dry, green-haired human-like. This is not English. This is not English. Guys, okay, it's like a little green, hairy gremlin that looks kind of humanish, okay? And then if you hear something in Indonesian, it translates to if you lag far behind, slow down your path, then that means you're gonna be eaten by one of these guys. I want to get past this. I'm so confused. I'm so confused. I'm trying to find out what a Patatong is, dude. I mean, it doesn't look fun. It looks scary, you know, like kind of spooked. So if you hear that behind you, you got to get the mat from the front of the village, I guess. Okay, moving on. This is boring. Moving on. All right, next up we got the Genderuwo. This is a mythical creature from Java, Indonesia. It's described as a reddish or black-skinned, hairy humanoid with large, muscular body. And within Javanese mythology, this creature is said to be supernatural in nature with the ability to disappear and appear at will or transform into human. The Genderuwo is described as generally being a muscular, hairy humanoid with reddish black skin and bulging eyes. But because of its supernatural ability, it may appear at first as a hairy dwarf humanoid, but it can transform quickly into gigantic humanoid when approached by a human. It's also said to have the ability to communicate with humans and even transform into humans to trick others. It's also said that the Genderuwo possesses a magnificent sex drive and hypnotic skill, and they seduce women by transforming into their husbands, and they inhabit the female's uterus to gain sexual satisfaction for both itself and and it can even say human gender bred from this relationship. Because of this describes this Genderuwo as the obscure monster erotica genre, which inspired abominations like Come for Bigfoot. Oh my god, what the hell, dude? What am I reading right now? Anyways, Genderuwo is said to be all over the Java island, and if you ask any Javanese villager, chances are they might have seen seen one. Ginger Uwo form colonies on various forests and mountains within Java, but they can also be found individually hiding on huge trees or bamboo forests near human habitation. Just like any other ghosts found in Indonesia, they can also inhabit dark and humid places like abandoned buildings. Ginger Uwo are sighted all over Java, but nobody cared enough to document them. Most people are just aware where they might appear or live, and they move on with their lives. But some stories still appear on television and on the internet. Next up, we have the Long Suir. Now, you'll notice with this one, there's kind of a pattern happening with a lot of these about pregnant women. I don't think that they like pregnant very much back then. But the Long Suir is a female revenant in Malay and other mythologies in the Malay archipelago. A Long Suir is a type of vampire which is the ghost of a woman who died while pregnant or giving birth. Long Suirs are different from the Pontianak, which is the ghost of the child who has died at birth. So this is the woman, not the child. They take the form as a beautiful woman with long black hair that reaches her ankles, although they also can take the form of the floating woman's head, from which entrails and a spinal column hang, which is similar to that other one we talked about. Long Suirs also have been described as having incredibly long nails, hands extending down to their feet, and wearing green robes. They prey on humans, preferring the blood of newborn male children, but also consuming newborn female children. Now, in his book Malay Magic, Walter William Skeet, an English anthropologist, recorded the origins of the Long Suir myth as told by Malays in Seling. The original Long Suir, whose embodiment is supposed to be like a night owl, is described as being a woman of dazzling beauty who died from the shock of hearing that her child was stillborn and has taken the shape of Pontianak. On hearing the terrible news, she, quote, clapped her hands and without further warning, quote, flew whinnying away to a tree upon which she perched. She may be known by her robe of green, by her tapering nails of extraordinary length, a mark of beauty in that culture, and by the long, jet black tresses which she allows to fall down to her ankles, in order to conceal the hole in the back of her head through which she sucks the blood of children. These vampire-like proclivities of hers may, however, be successfully combated if the right means are adopted. For if you were able to catch her, cut her nails short and her luxuriant tresses, and stuff them into the hole in her neck, she will become tame and indistinguishable from any normal woman, remaining so for years. Cases have been known, indeed, in which she becomes a wife and a mother until she was allowed to dance at a village, and at that point she reverts to her ghostly form and flew off into the dark and gloomy forest from whence she came. Now, the Long Suir is associated with certain trees and the parasitic fern sakat, which grows in dark green clusters and is said to be a common resting place. Woodcutters that harvest wood from the poisonous ringus trees in Malaysia must undertake elaborate exorcisms to counteract being haunted by a longoose ear. Longoose ears are also associated with a nighthawk or an owl, which is said to perch on the roof of the house while a pregnant mother or infant are being attacked by the vampire. In some traditions, Long Suirs take the form of a night bird, and it's believed that the hoot of an owl is the cry of a woman seeking her lost child. The rest of the tribe can prevent a deceased woman from returning as a Long Suir by putting glass beads in the mouth of the corpse, a hen's egg under the armpits, and needles in the palms of the hands. It's believed that if this is done, the deceased woman cannot become a Long Suir since she can't open her mouth to shriek or wave her arms and open and close her hands while flying. In the folklore of Sakai and Indonesia's people in the northern Malay Peninsula, a Longoosir can be repelled by using charms or chants against the demon, and the leaves of a certain plant there are also considered to be a powerful charm against Longoosirs. In 2013, villagers in the Pasir Puteh district in Kelantan, Malaysia, reported sightings of a Longoosir that was terrorizing the town. The residents described seeing a long-haired banshee flying and cackling in the night, and the claims of sightings spread to nearby villages. Local authorities urged the villages to remain calm and pray together to repel the spirit. Rumors of the demonic appearances ended after a local shaman claimed to have captured 4 of the creatures. A local religious officer acknowledged the existence of the spirit but cautioned against talk of magic as it may be sacrilegious. Next up, we got the Siguape. For over a century, stories have been passed down of a creature that lurks within the shadows of the wooded mountainous regions in the Dominican Republic. Oh, by the way, I'm getting my information for this one from artistico.com. A feral woman with long dark hair and backwards feet that preys on the lonely farmer while he harvests the cacao, or the would-be adventurer in a search of new routes. Young boys and girls are warned against venturing out into the woods alone with stories of this ravenous creature that feeds on the flesh of souls and men. Those that survive have described a stillness in the area, as if birds, insects, and land animals had been frightened away, followed by soft whispers and howls that flowed with the gentle breeze and echoed cannabis. The calling draws you in from all around until the creature finally reveals itself, a fair maiden standing no higher than a meter but with a harmony in all its muscles and limbs. Large, dark, and enchanting almond-shaped eyes, hair as black as night, but with a luster that glows with thick and long and draped over her body to ankle. This is the legend of La Chiguapa, a creature of Dominican folklore that today is still told at the bedside of many children. Such is its popularity that many, especially in the rural areas of the country, still claim that it's true. The most revered and terrifying terrifying of the Siguapa storylines describes a demon which lives in deep caves and lures lonely men with beauty and sensuality, ensnaring the victim in a hypnotic stare and leading them back into her dwelling where she consumes them to the bare bones, or traps them forever for her carnal pleasures. But there is also a story that describes a timid creature that quickly disappears if they sense people about, a lonely girl that sleeps in the treetops and feeds on fruits, birds, fish, other small animals, a creature that is said to be a descendant of a race of small people that lived within secluded mountains long before the first indigenous people crossed over into the greater Antilles. This is a story that first introduced the legend of Siguapas in the Dominican Republic in a novel by Francisco Garidi, first published in 1866. It should be noted that some sources have claimed the Siguapa as a legend that has been passed down since the time of the Taino Indians. But according to a sociologist named Ginetta Candelario, the Siguapa is not a legend of Taino origins that predates Spanish colonization of the island, which makes Garidi's short story the first introduction of the character into Dominican. And this is how he describes the Siguapa in his book in 1866. It is said that since before the discovery of this island there exists a race whose residence has always been the heart of these mountains, but it is preserved in all its purity, sleeping in the crowns of cedars and feeding on river fish, birds, and fruit. The Siguapa, which is the name by which it's known, is a creature that only rises a rod in height, though it should not be believed that in its proportions there is a deformity of the so-called dwarfs in Europe and America. Far from it, there is an exact harmony in all her muscles and limbs, a wonderful beauty in her face, and an agility in her movement so full of grace that she leaves the one who sees her absorbed. She has the bronze skin of the true Indian, the black and slanted eyes, the soft, luscious, and abundant hair that rolls down the backs of female to the very calf. The Siguapa has no other language than the howl and runs like a hare through the mountains, or sometimes leaps like a bird through the branches of trees as soon as it discovers another being other than its own race. In general, she is attributed a sensitivity without example, and it's added that having captured it sometimes through open traps in the forests, she's been able to see die within a few hours from the pain, drowned in her own crying, but without exhaling a single plaint, let alone revealing indignation. In Garidi's short story, a young couple had gone down to the river to fetch some water and were spied by a male Siguapa. 3 days after this encounter, the girl that had witnessed the Siguapa dies. In this story, the Siguapa is not a flesh-eating demon that can hypnotize its victim, it's a shy creature that gets consumed by jealousy whenever he or she encounters a person of the opposite sex. This jealousy creates a connection, either a male Siguapa woman or a female Siguapa with a man, that later leads to the death of the two connected beings. And that's the basic scenario of Garidi's short story, but a very different telling from today is a story of a frightening creature with backwards feet. And although the backwards facing feet is considered the Siguapa's most defining feature, Garidi never describes his character as having backwards facing feet in the original short story. Backwards feet of Siguapas is an adapted feature which has a long history in ghost stories told in other parts of the world. In Hindu mythology, the boots, male, and churl, female, are ghosts which can take on human form and only be recognized by its backwards facing feet. In other myths throughout the world, ghost-like characters and forest-dwelling creatures have at times been described with odd features such as backwards feet, rotating heads, or some other odd physical anomaly, or anomaly, whatever, dude. This practice of borrowing elements from old tales to implement into new stories is very common in literature, though, so it pretty much just makes sense. Alright, next up we got the lamp. Now, the Lampor is another one that I really cannot find much online, but I'll give a basic overview. The lamp, derived from Indonesian folklore, specifically from regions like Java and Bali, represents a fascinating and eerie figure in the realm of supernatural entities. This creature is often depicted as a flying head accompanied by entrails or flames, and the depiction of the Lampor varies across different tales, but the essence remains a ghostly presence invoking fear and intrigue. The origins of the Lampor are deeply rooted in Indonesian mythological traditions, suggesting a cultural fascination with the supernatural and the afterlife, which, I mean, you can tell because so many of these have been Indonesian. The creature is believed to be the manifestation of a person's soul who engaged in black magic, other malevolent deeds during their lifetime, and the idea of a flying head with entrails reflects a common theme in Southeast Asian mythology, where the head is considered the seat of the soul and spiritual power. Lampor is said to appear at night, often in remote or haunted locations, which adds an element of mystery and danger to its folk. The night, with its inherent obscurity and unknowns, provides the perfect backdrop for the Lampor to haunt the living. The stories and beliefs surrounding this creature serve not only as thrilling tales, but cautionary tales about the consequences of engaging in dark arts or leading a life of wickedness in that culture. And I'm sorry, guys, I tried. Next up we got the Papo Bawa. Papo Bawa is the name of an evil spirit which is believed by residents of Zanzibar to have first appeared on the Tanzanian island of Pemba. In 1995, it was the focus of a major outbreak of mass hysteria or panic which spread from Pemba to Inja, the main main island of the Zanzibar archipelago. Papaboa is a Swahili name which translates literally to bat wing. This name is said to have originated as a description of the dark shadow cast by the spirit when it attacks at night. It does not refer to the actual form of the spirit, which is liable to change. Swahili speakers also use a plural form of the name, Papabobawa, to refer to multiple manifestations of the feared spirit. But then, I mean, we just say Papabawas and it means the same thing. Papabawa is a shapeshifter and described as taking multiple forms, not just that of a bat as the name implies. It can take either human or animal form, and it can metamorphose from one into the other. Papabawas typically visit homesteads at night, but they can also be seen in the daytime. It's sometimes associated with the presence of a sulfurous odor, but this is not always the case. Papabawa attacks men, children, and women, and may attack all of the members of a household or passing on to another house in the neighborhood. Its nocturnal attacks can comprise simple physical assault and or poltergeist-like phenomena, but most feared is the SA and anal R word of men and women. I'm not sure how much I can say on YouTube, but this is the folklore apparently. Victims are often urged to tell others that they've been assaulted and are threatened with repeat visits by Papabawa. During Papabawa panics, many people try to guard against attack by spending the night awake outside their house, often huddled around an open fire with other family members and neighbors. Panics occur most often in Zanzibar, throughout the island of Pemba, and in the north and west of Unguja Island, including Zanzibar City. Now, as legendary creatures go, Papabawa is pretty recent as far as the origin goes. Sightings of the Papabawa only go back about 50 years. Parkins says that the first reports date back to 1965 on the island of Pemba, appearing shortly after that island's political revolution. Better known sightings followed in 1970, and the creature resurfaced periodically in the 1980s, reaching a peak in 1995. 5 years passed without a sighting, but the Papabawa appeared briefly in 2000 and again in 2006. Or 2007, my bad. A popular origin story of the Papabawa proposes that in the 1970s, an angry sheik released a jinn to take vengeance on his neighbors. The sheik lost control of the jinn, who took to demonic ways, and it's been argued that because of Zanzibar's past as an Arab-run slave market, the story of Papabawa is an articulated social memory of the horrors of slavery. Reports of Papabawa attacks rise and fall with the election cycle in Zanzibar, apparently, although victims argue that Papabawa is apolitical, which means not political. Okay, the rest of the stuff that I've researched is just political stuff, which probably doesn't even matter. Nobody cares about the politics of Zanzibar, so let's keep going on. Next up, we have the Pret. The Pret, or Preta, originates from Indian religions and folklore, notably Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism. This creature is considered to be a type of supernatural being or ghost that suffers from insatiable hunger or thirst. The term Preta is often translated as hungry ghost in English. Pretas are depicted in various texts and traditions, and their characteristics can vary significantly, but there are some core aspects that are commonly agreed upon across these accounts. Pretas are believed to be the spirits of deceased individuals who have committed certain misdeeds or wrong actions in their lifetime, leading to their rebirth in this unfortunate state. Specifically, acts of greed, jealousy, theft, lying, corruption, and especially not performing proper funeral rites for one's parents or not giving to charity are often cited as causes. In Buddhism, the creation of pretas is closely linked to the law of karma. The actions of individuals in their past lives determine their fate in the cycle of rebirth. Pretas are typically depicted as having mottled, thin, and elongated bodies with small mouths, thin necks, and large bloated stomachs. This physical form symbolizes their insatiable hunger and thirst, as their mouths and throats are too small or constricted to consume enough food or drink to satisfy their appetites. In some traditions, pretas can be invisible to the human eye, existing in a realm or state of suffering that overlaps with the human world. In the lore, there are various types of pretas, each suffering due to different kinds of desires or attachments. There are those with external obstacles. These pretas cannot find food or water, or when they do, it turns into repulsive substances. There are those with internal obstacles. These pretas can find food and water, but they're unable to consume it due to their constricted throats or the food bursting into flames. And then there are those with specific obsessions. Some pretas suffer because of particular obsessions or cravings they had in life. In many Asian cultures, there are annual festivals, such as the Ghost Festival in Chinese culture, the Bon Festival in Japan, and the Gai Jatra Festival in Nepal, where offerings are made to the dead, including pretas, to alleviate their sufferings. These offerings often include food, water, or religious rituals intended to help those beings find some relief or potentially a path to a better rebirth. Next up, we have the Nyai Roro Kidul. Nyai Roro Kidul is a supernatural being in Indonesian folklore. She is the queen of the Southern Sea in Sundanese and Javanese mythology. In Javanese mythology, she is a creation who fills the realm of life as the goddess of harvest and other goddesses of nature. Meanwhile, she was originally the daughter of the Sunda kingdom, who was expelled by her father because of her stepmother. The legend of Nyai Rara Kidul originated from the Sunda kingdom of the 15th century and is older than that of the Islamic Mataram kingdom of the 18th century. However, research into the cultural anthropology of the Javanese and Sundanese peoples suggests that the legend of Java's of the Southern Sea may have originated a much much older prehistoric belief. But anyways, one of the Sundanese folktales tells of the Dewi Kedida, a beautiful princess of the Sunda kingdom who fled to the southern ocean after being cursed. The curse was cast by a shaman at the behest of a rival in the palace and left the princess with a disgusting skin disease. She jumped into the violent waves of the ocean, but she instead was cured and restored to beauty. The phantoms then made her the legendary Phantom Queen of the Southern Sea. A similar version is Candida, the only daughter of a king. Because of her beauty, she was nicknamed Dewi something, which means sun goddess, and despite having a beautiful daughter, the king was saddened that he did not have a son to succeed him as a king. The king then married somebody, and then they had a son from that marriage. And then they want their son to become king without any obstacles in the future, so the woman that the king married tries to get rid of Candida, the beautiful daughter. She went to the king and asked him to ban Candida away from the palace. But then the king pretty much just got pissed that like his new wife asked him to banish his daughter. So then the lady was like, oh no, it's okay, I'm sorry, until the king was no longer mad at her. But then the next day, before sunrise, the wife sent her servant to summon a shaman, and she told the shaman to cast a curse on Candida. By nightfall, Candida's body was itchy with scabies, foul-smelling, and full of boils, and she cried, not knowing what to do. The king invited many healers to cure Candida and realized that the disease was not natural, so it must have come from a curse. So then the wife got the king to ban his daughter away so she could not bring bad luck to the whole kingdom, because the curse would bring bad luck. Candida wandered alone aimlessly and could hardly cry anymore. She didn't hold a grudge against her stepmother, but she requested to have a friend to accompany her in her suffering. And then after almost 7 days and 7 nights, she finally arrived at the southern sea. The ocean water was clean and clear, unlike other oceans that were blue or green. Suddenly she heard a supernatural voice telling her to jump in the sea. She jumped in and swam, and the waters of the sea removed her boils without leaving a mark, making her even more beautiful. Then she had power over the southern sea and became the goddess. This one's pretty cool. This is just folklore of old stories and stuff. I don't really know why this is on this scary iceberg, but it's cool, dude. I like this. Next up, we got Spring-Heeled Jack. Spring-Heeled Jack is an entity in English folklore of the Victorian era. The first claimed sighting of Spring-Heeled Jack was in 1837. Later sightings were reported all over the United Kingdom and were especially prevalent in suburban London, the Midlands, and Scotland. There are many theories about the nature and identity of Spring-Heeled Jack. This urban legend was very popular in his time due to the tales of his bizarre appearance and ability to make extraordinary leaps, to the point that he became the topic of several works of fiction. Spring-Heeled Jack was described by people who've claimed to have seen him as a terrifying and frightful, appearing thing with diabolical physiognomy. Is that a word? Physiognomy, which means how your face looks. He also had clawed hands and eyes that, quote, resembled red balls of fire. One report claimed that beneath a black cloak, he wore a helmet and a tight-fitting white garment like an oilskin. Many stories also mentioned a devil-like aspect. Others said he was tall and thin with the appearance of a gentleman. Several reports mentioned that he could breathe out blue and white flames and that he wore metallic claws at his fingertips. At least 2 people claimed that he was able to speak comprehensible English. Now, in the early 19th century, there were reports of ghosts that stalked the streets of London. These human-like figures were described as pale. It was believed they stalked and preyed on lone pedestrians. The stories told of these figures formed part of a distinct ghost tradition in London, which some writers have argued formed the foundation of the later legend of Spring-Heeled Jack. The most important of these early entities was the Hammersmith ghost, which in 1803 and 1804 was reported in Hammersmith on the western fringes of London. It would later reappear in 1824. Another apparition, the Southampton ghost, was also reported as assaulting individuals in the night. This particular spirit bore many of the characteristics of Spring-Heeled Jack and was reported as jumping over houses and being over 10 foot tall. The first alleged sightings of Spring-Heeled Jack were made in London in 1837, and the last reported sighting is said in most of secondary literature to be made in Liverpool in 1904. According to much later accounts, in October 1837, a girl by the name of Mary Stevens was walking to Lavender Hill, where she was working as a servant after visiting her parents in Battersea. On her way through Clapham Common, a strange figure leapt at her from a dark alley. After immobilizing her with a tight grip on his arms, he began to kiss her face while ripping her clothes and touching her flesh with his claws, which were, according to her deposition, cold and clammy as those of... In a panic, the girl screamed, making the attacker flee, quickly. I would too, bro. The commotion brought several residents who immediately launched a search for the aggressor, but he could not be found. The next day, the leaping character is said to have chosen a very different victim near Mary Stevens' home, inaugurating a method that would appear in later reports. He jumped in the way of a passing carriage, causing the coachman to lose control, crash, and severely injure himself. Several witnesses claimed that he escaped by jumping over a 9-foot-high wall while cackling with a high-pitched, ringing laughter. Gradually, the news of the strange character spread, and soon the press and the public gave him the name Spring-Heeled Jack. In the beginning of the 1870s, Spring-Heeled Jack was reported again again in several places distant each other. In November 1872, the News of the World reported that Peckham was, quote, in a state of commotion owing to what is known as the Peckham ghost, a mysterious figure quite alarming in appearance. The editorial pointed out that it was none other than Spring-Heeled Jack, terrified a past generation. Similar stories were published in the Illustrated Police News. In April and May 1873, reported there were numerous sightings in Sheffield of the Park ghost, which locals also came to identify as Spring-Heeled Jack. This news was followed by more reported sightings until in August 1877, one of the most notable reports about Spring-Heeled Jack came from soldiers in Aldershot garrison. The story went as follows. A sentry on duty at the North Camp peered into the darkness, his attention attracted by a peculiar figure, quote, advancing towards him. The soldier issued a challenge, which went unheeded, and the figure came up beside him and delivered several slaps to his face. A guard shot at him with no visible effect. Some sources claim that the soldier may have fired blanks at him, others that he missed or fired warning shots. The strange figure then disappeared into the surrounding darkness, quote, with astonishing bounds. No one was ever caught and identified as Spring-Heeled Jack. Combined with the extraordinary abilities attributed to him and the very long period during which he was at large, reportedly, this has led to numerous and varied theories about who he is and his nature and all that. While several researchers seek a normal explanation for the event, some authors explore the more fantastic details of the story to propose kind of paranormal speculation as to what he is. Skeptical investigators have dismissed the stories of Spring-Heeled Jack as just mass hysteria, which developed around various stories of a boogeyman or devil, which have been around for centuries, or from exaggerated urban myths about a man who clambered over rooftops claiming that the devil was chasing him. And a lot of researchers think that like some individuals may be behind its origins, and then that was followed by imitators who heard the stories and wanted to imitate the Spring-Heeled Jack. But then also a variety of wildly speculative paranormal explanations have been proposed to explain the origin of Spring-Heeled Jack, including that he could have been an extraterrestrial entity with a non-human appearance and features. For example, the retroreflective red eyes or a phosphorus breath, as well as a superhuman agility deriving from life in a high-gravity world with his jumping ability and strange behavior coming from the fact that maybe his home planet had like less gravity, or more gravity, I mean. Or that maybe he was a demon accidentally or purposefully summoned into this world by practitioners of the occult. But yeah, no one really knows what this ever was. Next up, we got the Toil, or the Tuyul. A Toil is an undead infant in Indonesian and Malay folk. It also appears in the various other mythologies of Southeast Asia and is typically invoked as a helper by shamans by means of black magic. A common use for a Toil includes it being used for like financial gain, where the creature robs other people for whoever like summoned it. And as such, the Toil is popularly known to bring good luck to its host, but bad luck to anybody that encounters it. Now, there's a distinct lack of research information and academic sources that trace the history of the Toil. Like there's been stories, but like there's like a real like lack of like real stuff. Yet, according to some blogs, it suggested that the origins of owning a Toil dates as far back as pre-Islamic Arab society. Toil is traditionally and commonly described as looking no different from a near-naked toddler. However, regional differences can account for variation in appearance and characteristics. The Toil is claimed to look like a normal child with the exception of sharp teeth and red eyes, but the Indonesian Toil also has the addition of green skin and pointed ears. The Toil has the ability to scale walls and climb roofs. Modern depictions often give the Toil a goblin-like appearance with green or gray skin, pointed ears, and clouded eyes. And the Toil's behavior and like personality is typically said to be similar to that of a playful child, where it enjoys sweets, toys, and clothes. Its small size and childish tendencies are said to render it harmless, though behavioral characteristics can also differ from like region to region. Toil is apparently said to only steal half a person's valuable belongings, so only half. That's good, I guess. The belief in the Toil, and by extension child supernatural powers, has links to the common like Asiatic belief that every being consists of a soul, including that of babies. So you can kind of see like where this thing would from, like in their culture and their beliefs over there. Now, interestingly, in 2006, a fisherman from Kuala Pahang, Malaysia, reported finding a Toil that had been enclosed in a bottle on coastal shores. The Toil was handed over to the local state museum, where the director noted its red eyes and black clothing. And if I can get a picture, editor, can you put that up if you can find one? The Toil has also been used in theft crimes through the exploitation of people's beliefs in the creature. Like in 2009, a 77-year-old woman living in Malaysia was tricked into believing that her valuables were being targeted by a Toil through an anonymous phone. So people are like scamming old people. This thing. That's not good. Not good. That's not. Next up, we have a gremlin. I just want to say that gremlin is one of my favorite insults to call people ever. Like nothing, dude, nothing hits harder than if you're in an argument and you call somebody a gremlin, you know? Like, shut up, you gremlin. Like, dude, that hits so hard, calling somebody a gremlin. Oh my god. Like, can we normalize that as being like an insult? Or actually not, because it hits harder just because like nobody says it. And when you get called a gremlin, it's like, the hell? Like, what did I do to be called a gremlin? Anyways, a gremlin is a mischievous folkloric creature invented at the beginning of the 20th century, originally to explain malfunctions in aircraft, and later malfunctions machinations and other machinery and operators. Depictions of these creatures vary widely. Stories about them and references to them as the causes of especially inexplicable technical and mental problems of pilots were very popular during and after World War II, which is really interesting. I had no idea that was a thing. Although their origin is found in myths among airmen claiming that gremlins were responsible for sabotaging aircraft, the folklorist John W. Hazen states that some people derive the name from the Old English word grimen, which means to vex. But also some people think that it's plausible that the term is a blend of the word goblin with the name of the manufacturer of the most common beer available in the RAF, Fremlin, or at least back in the 20s. RAF, by the way, is Royal Air Force, which is like British. Anyways, an early reference to the gremlin is in aviator Pauline Gower's 1938 novel, The ATA, Women with, where Scotland is described as, quote, gremlin country, a mystical and rugged territory where scissor-wielding gremlins cut the wires of biplanes when unsuspecting pilots were about. So that's where they started, but when did they become like popular? So British author Roald Dahl is credited with getting the gremlins known outside of the Royal Air Force. He would have been familiar with the myth, having carried out his military service in the 80 Squadron of the Royal Air Force in the Middle East. But then he wrote his first children's novel called The Gremlins, in which gremlins were tiny men who lived on these fighter planes. So that's interesting. I had no idea that's where it came from. Roald Dahl is sick though, dude. Freaking Roald Dahl. I also love how gremlins are described as like mischievous. Like they're just like little creatures, just like little tiny little goblins that just are up to no good for like no apparent reason. Like they're like the Joker from the Dark Knight. They're just causing chaos just for fun because they can. It's a funny thought to me. All right, next up we got the Orang Bunian. In Malaysian and Indonesian folklore, Bunian people or Orang Bunian are supernatural beings said to be invisible to most humans, except those with, quote, spiritual sight. While the term is often translated as elves, it literally translates to hidden people or whistling. Hidden people? Grickle reference? Dude, the freaking people know more about Grickle. That makes me mad that that's not more pop. Grickle is awesome. I need to do a video on Grickle at some level. Anyways, Orang Bunian are described as beautiful, dressed in ancient Southeast Asian style and nearly identical to humans in appearance. Some mythological accounts describe the lack of a philtrum, which is like the medical cleft, which is like the indentation in the middle area of the upper lip. They don't have that apparently. Modern depictions of Orang Bunian deviate from the traditional folklore by introducing elf-like features like pointed ears, high fantasy influenced attire, or modern long. Orang Bunian are said to inhabit the deep forests or high mountains in Malay Peninsula, Sumatra, and Borneo, far from human contact, as well as near human communities, and are even said to share the same houses as some human families. According to legend, their social structure is similar to that of humans in the ancient Malay Peninsula, with families, clans, and royalty. As well as with other mythical beings in Indonesian folklore, Orang Bunian often have supernatural powers and must be appeased with certain rituals and customs before humans are allowed to trespass areas which they inhabit. Orang Bunian are generally regarded as benevolent, befriending, and assisting humans, particularly magicians and shamans. They're said to be able to intermarry with humans and bear invisible children. According to some tales, men had before I keep writing for my swear. They can intermarry with humans, but humans can't see them? According to some tales, men had married Orang Bunian women, but later decided to leave the Bunian community and return to the families they left behind. However, after returning to human society, they found that many years had passed and everyone they once knew had died. Next up, we got Oni. And Oni is a type of yokai, demon, or ogre, troll in Japanese folk. They're believed to live in caves or deep in the mountains. Oni are known for their superhuman strength and have been associated with powers like thunder and light, along with their evil nature manifesting in their propensity for murder and cannibalism. They're typically portrayed as hulking figures with one or more horns growing out of their heads, massive teeth, and a massive third eye in the center of their forehead. They're typically depicted with red, blue, black, or yellow colored skin, wearing loincloths of tiger pelt and carrying iron clubs. They also have 3 to 6 digits on each hand and foot tips like claw-like nail. Oni are able to change their looks to fool their victims into trusting them. Oni can be male or female, but they have been predominantly male throughout history. And when in disguise, Oni are capable of appearing as a man or a woman regardless of their gender. And as monstrous as Oni are, they've also been linked to bringing good fortune and wealth. During the Heian period, Oni were often depicted in Japanese literature as terrifying monsters. A prominent depiction of Oni is that they eat people in one mouth. There is the theory that the reason why stories of Oni eating people common is that wars, disasters, and famines where people lose their lives or go missing were interpreted as Oni from another world appearing in the present world to take humans. Japanese folklore, which involves tales about the origin and early history of Japan and Oni, mainly comes from 2 ancient texts, the Kojiki and the Nihongi. These texts are akin to a blend of history and mythology, explaining how Japan and its divine inhabitants came to be. And so as a basic rundown, there was in the beginning this place called the High Plane of Heaven, marking the start of time and space as per Japanese mythology. This realm saw the emergence appearance of the first divine beings, the central master or lord of August center of heaven, who signifies a central deity of immense importance, and then this other guy named the High Creator, indicative of a supreme creative force, and finally the Divine Creator, another key figure in this cosmic creation process. This is all kind of confusing, but it's just so you understand the Oni thing. And these gods known as kami are pivotal Shinto religion, embodying the spiritual essence that manifests the universe. And then they had to create the earth. This was a task assigned to two lesser kami named Izanji and Izanami. These figures are not just siblings, but they're also married, cool, and they're central to this cosmological narrative, giving birth to many children, who among them is the god of fire. But anyways, the birth of this god of fire marks a tragic turn in the story, as Izanami is mortally wounded during childbirth, leading to her demise and subsequent reign over Yomi, the underworld, transforming into a kami of death. Despite her transition to the realm of darkness, though, Izanami's legacy of life continues as she becomes like a life giver, because these people are like life givers, right? But then she started doing the same thing in the underworld. She created the first Oni, and that's how the Oni came to be. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. Oni are still like a pretty common thing in Japanese culture. They've kind of changed their meaning. Like now Oni are kind of more of a protective thing rather than like a wicked thing, pretty much. Men in Oni costumes often lead Japanese parades to dispel any bad luck, for example. Also, some Japanese buildings include Oni-faced roof tiles, which are thought to ward off bad luck, kind of like gargoyles in Western tradition. And it's also brought up a lot in like idioms and proverbs in Japan. Like it's just kind of a thing over there in their culture that they know. And before I move on, I'm going to talk about a few Oni stories. Momotaro, or the Peach Boy, is a well-known story about an elderly couple having the misfortune of never being able to conceive a child. But they find a giant peach that miraculously gives them a boy as their child. As the boy grows, he's made aware of an island of demons he captured, and after the money is taken, kept as slaves and a source of food. Momotaro sets to travel to this island with some cakes especially made for him. While on his journey, he meets a dog, a monkey, and a pheasant who partner up with him to defeat the demons on the island. And once the demons have been taken out, they recover the treasures and return them to the rightful owners. And there's like the Oni, or the demons, in the way. Next up is one called Oni Mask. This is a story where a young girl goes off to work at a lady's house to make money for her ailing mother. She talks to a mask of her mother's face when she is done with her work to comfort herself. One day, the curious co-workers see the mask and decide to prank her by putting on an Oni mask to replace the mother's mask. Seeing the Oni mask, she takes it as a sign that her mother is worse, not getting better, so she leaves after alerting her boss. After trying to run to her mother's side, she's sidetracked by some men gambling by a campfire. The men catch her and ignore her pleas to let her go to her mother, and instead make her watch the fire so it doesn't go out during the game. While she's stoking the fire, she decides to put on the Oni mask to protect her from the flames, and at that moment, the men only see a brightly lit Oni through the red glowing flames, and terrified, they run away without gathering their money. And the girl, after having made sure the fire would not go out, gathers the money and waits for the men to return it, but as time goes on, she remembers that she was going to see her mother, and she runs to her mother. While she's at home, though, she sees her mother's healthier than before, and because of the money the gamblers left behind, she has enough to take care of her without going back to work. That's awesome. And there's another one called Red Oni Who Cried, but I don't gotta waste your time. I don't gotta waste your time, guys. And that's it. This Iceberg, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. These are always fun to make. These are always cool. Let me know what you thought, guys. Everybody have a good night. Sleep well and sweet dreams.